A courthouse stands at the center of town, its stone steps worn shallow by generations of shoes. Above the entrance, an eagle spreads its wings. Inside, a judge sits beneath the seal of the state. Across the square, a church bell marks the hour. A bronze soldier faces east, one hand resting on a rifle, his name joined to the names of local men who never came home. For a long time, nobody asks what these objects mean. They do not need to ask. The courthouse, the bell, the monument, the flag moving above the post office all belong to the same visible order. Each object tells a portion of the same story. The law descends from something older than the official who administers it. Time carries duties beyond employment. The dead remain members of the town. Sacrifice deserves public memory. Then the meanings begin to loosen. The courthouse remains, though justice becomes a word without common definition. The flag remains, though one man sees inheritance and another sees accusation. The church bell rings over citizens who no longer agree whether the sound is a blessing, an intrusion, or charming local scenery for the real estate brochure. The objects still stand. The world that made them legible has vanished. A society can survive disagreements. It may even gain strength from a hard dispute conducted between people who recognize the same standards, appeal to the same memory, and believe that truth remains possible. Such people quarrel inside one house. Our trouble begins deeper down. We no longer agree that we are inside the same house. Words such as family, freedom, justice, beauty, nature, sacrifice, and dignity arrive burdened with private definitions. The language sounds familiar. The cosmologies beneath it have separated. Two citizens may use the same noun while referring to rival universes. This produces the peculiar unreality of modern public speech. Everyone appears to be discussing the same subject. Nobody stands before the same object. Politics grows feverish because political language has been asked to carry a weight it cannot bear. Elections are expected to settle questions of human nature. Courts are expected to create moral consensus. Policy documents are expected to repair metaphysical collapse, usually in 12-point font, with an appendix on stakeholder engagement. Administration can coordinate strangers. It cannot turn strangers into a people. A people forms through shared attention. Men become companions when they face the same danger, kneel before the same altar, mourn the same dead, sing the same song, or work beneath a common standard. The object before them gathers their separate lives into one field of meaning. This is why every durable civilization has surrounded itself with symbols. A wedding ring gives visible form to fidelity. A uniform places the individual inside an office. A family portrait gathers generations into one room. A flag compresses battles, borders, grief, memory, and allegiance into cloth. A church bell claims the hour for a higher order. These objects do more than communicate an idea. They tell people where they stand. Modern government attempts the same work through approved language. Corporations try through mission statements printed beside elevators. The results are thin because unity cannot be manufactured by prose that has survived 12 committees and frightened nobody. A shared world must be seen before it can be governed. Art gives a society the image through which it recognizes itself. When that image weakens, public life becomes a contract among people who happen to occupy the same tax district. The great cultural rupture of the past century did not begin with bad intentions. Postmodernism entered intellectual life carrying a useful instrument, suspicion. It asked who benefited from inherited stories. It searched beneath noble language for concealed power. It examined the hero and found conquest. It examined the canon and found exclusion. It examined beauty and found class. It examined tradition and found the fingerprints of whoever had been strong enough to preserve it. Some of these accusations struck their target. Traditions contain hypocrisy because human beings handle traditions. Give mankind a sacred rule and someone will eventually use it to win a parking dispute. Power hides beneath courtesy. Greed wears ceremonial clothing. A civilization must be capable of judging its own corruption. The instrument became an atmosphere. Suspicion ceased to serve truth and began to dissolve the possibility of truth. Every inherited symbol entered a permanent trial. The crown could no longer signify kingship before being charged with coercion. The cathedral could no longer disclose divine order before being reduced to hierarchy in stone. The mother and child could no longer signify tenderness before an inquiry began into representation, privilege, and the political dangers of a lap. Every image acquired quotation marks. Irony became the preferred posture of the educated, because irony permits intelligence without allegiance. One may stand above everything, detect the hidden motive, expose the contradiction, and risk no act of devotion. Nothing claims the critic because the critic has already explained it away. This posture offers a certain pleasure. The man holding the hammer enjoys a high rate of success in a room full of glass. Yet a civilization cannot inhabit demolition. The cultural critic became skilled at dismantling meanings created by the dead. He proved less capable of creating meanings strong enough to house the living. Suspicion can expose a fraudulent story. It cannot raise children inside a truthful one. That is the weakness at the center of the postmodern settlement. It removed the authority of the common story while leaving the human hunger for one untouched. People still wanted cosmic orientation. They wanted sacred history, moral rank, heroes, villains, initiation, belonging, sacrifice, and a place within time. They wanted some account of why they had been born, what deserved their loyalty, what might redeem suffering, and what form a worthy life should take. The kitchen was condemned. The hunger remained. Into that hunger came miniature mythologies. Political factions developed their own saints and devils. Subcultures invented dress codes, origin stories, sacred grievances, forbidden words, conversion narratives, and rituals of purification. Online communities assembled fragments into private worlds, each coherent enough to give comfort and hostile enough to prevent a common life. Then the market entered the ruins. The market dislikes an empty shelf. Commercial entertainment began supplying recurring heroes, sacred objects, creation myths, moral conflicts, apocalypses, genealogies, prophecies, and resurrection. Audiences learned fictional family trees with the seriousness once reserved for dynasties. They debated imaginary canons with the discipline of medieval theologians, though the councils now met on video platforms and the relics came in molded plastic. This can be mocked too easily. The appetite beneath it is real. People want worlds. They want stories in which a small act belongs to a larger pattern. They want objects whose meaning can be recognized without explanation. They want membership among others who understand why a sword, a ring, a mask, a melody, or a line of verse matters. Commercial storytelling offers rented transcendence. For a time, the franchise holds together. The hero obeys a recognizable code. The sacred object retains its charge. The world has rules. The audience gathers around those rules and feels the relief of coherence. Then the studio discovers a market segment. The ancient prophecy receives a streaming spin-off. The hero's sacrifice is reopened to preserve sequel rights. The sacred object appears on a cup beside the discount rack. Eternity is scheduled for the fourth quarter. The trouble runs deeper than bad taste. Commercial mythology belongs to no particular people and no particular place. Its first obligation is continued consumption. A true common world joins the dead, the living, and the unborn. A commercial world joins release schedules. This difference can be felt in the way modern people speak about beauty. A man now says, "This is my aesthetic." The phrase sounds harmless. Often it is. Yet it reveals a cultural shift. Beauty has become an accessory of personal branding. The room, the clothes, the music, the books, and the pictures express an individual profile. They tell strangers what sort of consumer stands before them. An older citizen might have said, "This is our church. This is our square. This is the monument where we gather. This is how our houses face the street. This is the song we sing when we bury one of our own." One voice presents taste. The other presents a world. A logo may be recognized everywhere and loved nowhere. Recognition cannot bear the weight of reverence. Repetition can make an image familiar. It cannot make the image worthy. Art capable of rebuilding a shared world must reveal an order that people can inhabit, rather than a product they can briefly consume. Human beings learn the meaning of a place through form long before they can explain it. A courthouse with columns teaches that judgment belongs to an order older than the judge. A cemetery arranged around a chapel places the dead inside sacred memory. A table beneath the portraits of parents and grandparents turns supper into membership among generations. A school entrance lined with the names of its graduates tells a child that he has entered a story already underway. Form is silent instruction. Consider the Gothic cathedral. The pointed arch pulls the eye upward. Light enters through colored glass and reaches the floor altered, made strange, almost material. Stone columns rise like trees whose branches meet above the nave. The body passes through a sequence of thresholds and is drawn toward the altar. No abstract lecture is required. The building makes transcendence physically plausible. Its theology lives in height, proportion, light, sculpture, sound, movement, and orientation. Its saints stand among local craftsmen, kings, beasts, vines, angels, and scenes from Scripture. Its bells order the day. Its calendar spills into the street through feast and procession. The town does not contain the cathedral as one private interest among many. The cathedral gives the town its center. It is metaphysics with a roof. Modern architecture often claims neutrality. Neutrality has a remarkably stable appearance: blank walls, low ceilings, fluorescent light, gray carpet, and a chair designed to discourage speculation about the immortality of the soul. Yet every building teaches. A shopping center teaches desire to circulate. An airport teaches that nobody truly belongs where he stands. A glass office tower teaches that power wishes to be visible and unreachable at once. A windowless school teaches children that daylight is a scheduling error. A cathedral teaches that the world has a center and that the human body may be ordered toward it. Ugliness forms people too. The strip mall, the warehouse church, the beige municipal annex, the open office, the plastic chair, the glowing screen mounted in every waiting room all train expectation. They teach what deserves care. They announce what sort of life is thought possible within them. A people surrounded by temporary materials begins to think temporarily. A people raised beneath disposable images becomes suspicious of permanence. When every surface is designed for quick replacement, continuity starts to look eccentric. Beauty is order made visible to the senses. That order enters us before argument. A child loves a tradition through its songs before understanding its doctrine. A worshiper senses sacred rank through incense, vestment, gesture, and icon before learning the theological vocabulary. A citizen encounters national continuity through ceremony before reading constitutional history. People defend with reasons what beauty first taught them to love. This is why sacred art carries such force. Enter an Orthodox church and stand before the iconostasis. Christ occupies the center. The Mother of God bears the incarnate Word. Saints gather in ordered presence. Doors divide and join sanctuary and nave. Gold catches the moving candlelight. Faces look outward toward the worshiper. The screen does not decorate an ordinary room. It reveals the room. It tells the worshiper where he stands, who surrounds him, what history he has entered, and what order governs the encounter. A pamphlet may explain the communion of saints. The iconostasis makes the doctrine difficult to forget. Beauty gives truth a body. The loss of beauty becomes a moral and spiritual event because ugliness trains desire downward. A badly built church teaches that sacred things deserve the care given to a conference annex. A cheap devotional picture teaches that holiness belongs to sentiment rather than greatness. A public monument designed to puzzle the passerby teaches that memory is an expert concern. A neighborhood of identical boxes teaches that human dwelling has no relation to honor. These lessons enter quietly. They reach the soul before the mind calls a meeting. This is why explanation cannot rescue a work whose form contradicts its stated purpose. Every failed building now arrives with a paragraph explaining that discomfort was intentional. Every incomprehensible object receives a wall label. Every sterile plaza has a committee report proving that the benches represent community. The eye remains unconvinced. People will rarely sacrifice for a world presented as an administrative necessity. They may sacrifice for one that has shown them glory. The artist therefore carries a public office, whether he admits it or not. Modern culture describes art as self-expression. The artist looks inward, discovers a private condition, and gives it form. This account contains some truth. The inner life matters. Personal vision gives work its pressure and distinction. Yet private expression cannot serve as the final purpose of art. A society gains little from being asked to subsidize someone else's diary forever. The greater artist performs a public task. He reveals what a people loves. He gives shape to its fears. He makes moral rank visible. He shows what courage looks like in a human posture, what grief does to the face, what fidelity costs, and what sort of man a civilization hopes to produce. Every artist constructs a room inside the public imagination. A heroic statue teaches the viewer which stance deserves honor. A portrait teaches what dignity looks like when embodied in a person. A hymn teaches sorrow how to kneel. A tragic drama teaches that some acts alter the moral structure of a life and cannot be dismissed as lifestyle choices. Art builds environments of judgment. Law tells people what they may do. Art teaches them what seems noble enough to desire. The difference is immense. A government can punish desertion. It cannot make courage beautiful. A regulation can protect an old building. It cannot teach citizens why the building deserves love. A curriculum can require historical facts. It cannot create reverence for the dead through facts alone. Atmosphere reaches the soul before argument finds its notes. Revolutions understand this. They remove statues, rename streets, redesign flags, rewrite ceremonies, and replace portraits because the image of the former order continues to command allegiance. A monument never becomes neutral merely because the new government dislikes its message. Whoever governs the image governs the field of moral possibility. This helps explain why modern cultural fights concentrate around representation. Every faction knows that the image selects the cast of heroes. It determines whose suffering will be remembered, whose virtues will appear admirable, whose face will stand for the future, and which forms of life will look normal. The fight over art is a fight over reality made visible. Yet shared art requires limits. The modern creative ideal treats unlimited choice as a moral good. The artist must escape convention, overturn expectation, resist inherited categories, and invent a private language. Such freedom sounds generous. In practice, limitless choice often produces formlessness. A civilization without artistic limits resembles a warehouse in which every object is present and nothing belongs. Shared culture depends upon repetition. Repetition depends upon discipline. A sonnet becomes recognizable because it accepts a structure. An icon enters tradition because the painter submits his hand to a received grammar. A liturgy becomes communal because the worshiper does not redesign it before breakfast. A folk song survives because each singer receives enough of the old melody to pass it onward. The limit makes participation possible. Without stable form, every encounter begins at zero. The viewer must decode the artist's private symbols, read the statement, consult the interview, and perhaps apologize for still preferring the painting near the cafe. A common world cannot demand specialized training from every citizen. It needs legible symbols. Legibility does not condemn art to repetition without life. Gothic churches differed across cities. Icon painters developed recognizable hands. Folk melodies changed as they crossed mountains and generations. Craft traditions acquired local accents. Living tradition creates variation inside continuity. Our culture often reverses the order. It seeks endless distinction without common ground. Each artist must be unprecedented. Each brand must have a unique voice. Each building must make a statement. The result is a crowd of statements with no language binding them together. A black square shocks only within a civilization that remembers pictures. The canon once gave artists and audiences a common storehouse. It named achievements worthy of study. It supplied figures, forms, stories, proportions, melodies, and moral problems. The new work entered a conversation already underway. Without a canon, each artist shouts a first sentence into an abandoned hall. Freedom gains force when form gives it somewhere to strike. This is where restoration often goes wrong. One party treats the past as a costume department. It copies old surfaces, applies ornament, and hopes that atmosphere will perform the labor of belief. Another party treats inheritance as an embarrassment. It borrows a symbol, cuts it from its source, and uses it as branding. Neither act creates tradition. A copied form becomes scenery when its inner order has been forgotten. A severed form becomes merchandise. Living inheritance demands deeper fidelity. The artist must learn what an older form believed about reality. A Gothic church rose upward because hierarchy belonged to its theology. An icon employed its peculiar perspective because the sacred image was understood to address the worshipper rather than imitate a window into ordinary space. A village gathered its buildings around a square because public life required a visible center. A family placed portraits in the dining room because the dead remained present in the household story. These choices were metaphysical before they became stylistic. A new sacred building may use present materials. It may answer needs unknown to medieval builders, yet its light, proportion, procession, threshold, and imagery must still disclose sacred order. The task is inheritance of purpose rather than imitation of surface. Notre Dame offers a revealing example. When fire entered the roof and the spire collapsed, people across a fractured France watched in silence. Many no longer shared the faith that built the cathedral. Some had entered it only as tourists. Yet the wound felt national. Why? Because the building still held an image of France that no speechwriter could reproduce. It joined kings, revolutionaries, worshippers, soldiers, craftsmen, mourners, tourists, and schoolchildren inside one physical memory. Its stones had become capable of gathering people who could agree on little else. The cathedral gave France a visible picture of itself. Age alone did not grant that power. Plenty of old buildings remained curiosities. Notre Dame carried a scale of meaning large enough to exceed the disputes surrounding it. A living tradition performs the same work. It receives inherited symbols and gives them force in the present. It does not ask the dead to repeat themselves. It asks the living to prove they are legitimate heirs. This requires patrons. Civilizations receive the art they are willing to finance. Cultural conservatives have perfected the literature of complaint. They lament ugly buildings, hostile entertainment, empty galleries, thin music, weak churches, and the general triumph of beige. Then they purchase another subscription from the people producing them. Taste without patronage is private irritation. Artists need time, training, materials, workshops, commissions, and access to an audience. These conditions arise through financial structures. A culture that funds degradation while praising beauty in essays has already voted. Historic patronage joined wealth to memory. A patron commissioned a chapel that would outlive him. A family ordered a portrait for descendants not yet born. A guild funded a window showing its craft within sacred history. A town built a fountain that gave generosity a permanent address. Modern wealth often buys visibility. The work succeeds when it attracts attention, circulates quickly, and appears in the correct photograph. Whether it deserves affection may be discussed later, usually after the reception, when the caterer has begun folding the tables. A restored artistic order needs patrons who think beyond novelty. A parish that commissions a skilled iconographer performs a greater act than purchasing generic decor from a religious warehouse. A family that hires a portrait painter gives descendants a human face through which to meet their own lineage. A town that raises a durable monument gives memory a physical location. A school that surrounds children with noble figures tells them, day after day, what sort of adulthood deserves pursuit. Patronage turns preference into reality. The invoice is less romantic than the fresco. It remains part of the fresco. This work will begin locally because the nation is too large to serve as the first unit of repair. A household can choose images that reveal its loyalties. A church can commission art that makes theology visible. A school can hang portraits of courage, holiness, discovery, and sacrifice, rather than fill corridors with laminated slogans. A neighborhood can preserve a building whose materials remember the hands that shaped it. A town can mark its dead with something finer than a vinyl banner replaced after weather. Each place becomes a seed of coherence. The work begins when a room ceases to be arranged by convenience alone. Its furniture, pictures, books, lighting, table, and habits begin to tell one story. The objects agree with one another. The room develops a moral temperature. A child grows within that order and absorbs it through repetition. He sees the same icon each morning. He hears the same hymn each feast. He eats beneath the face of an ancestor whose name is still spoken. He learns that objects can carry duties, that beauty deserves care, and that he was born into a story older than his preferences. This is how culture returns. It rarely descends through a policy memorandum. It grows through repeated contact with meaningful form. It moves from hand to hand, room to room, household to household, parish to parish, square to square. At first, the acts may seem small. A craftsman carves a door that could have been purchased from a catalog. A family repairs a table instead of replacing it. A congregation chooses one worthy image rather than 20 cheap ones. A school gives its hall a name tied to local memory. A town restores its monument and teaches children whose names are cut into the stone. Each act tells the disposable world that it has met resistance. The larger crisis of our age is often described as political, technological, or psychological. It is also aesthetic in the deepest sense. We have lost the visible forms that once made a common moral order appear natural. The screen intensifies the loss. Each person now carries a private symbolic world in his pocket. The images are selected, arranged, and refreshed according to patterns no neighbor shares. Two people sit at the same table while inhabiting separate theaters of attention. Their eyes receive different heroes, different scandals, different ideals of beauty, different accounts of reality. The old public square offered one fountain, one monument, one church facade, one view of the courthouse. The digital square offers a separate square to every citizen, then wonders why the crowd cannot gather. A tool belongs in the hand. It does not belong on the altar. Technology may distribute art, preserve archives, teach technique, and connect patrons with craftsmen, yet every tool must be judged by the person it forms. Does it deepen attention? Does it strengthen memory? Does it lead the eye back toward the world? Does it cultivate patience, skill, speech, silence, and embodied life? Or does it train the user to graze endlessly across images that leave no mark? The endless feed presents more art than any emperor could have possessed. It often produces less encounter than a single icon in a quiet room. Abundance strips images of duration. Nothing remains before the eye long enough to become a companion. A shared world needs durable attention. People must look at the same thing for long enough that the thing begins to shape them. A mural known from childhood, a song sung across decades, a procession returning each year, a grave visited by several generations, a building whose stone darkens while the town changes around it. Memory needs places to land. Art gives memory an address. This is why the restoration of a shared world will demand more than improved taste. It will require a different relation to time. The builder must accept that the finest result may mature after his death. The patron must fund work intended for descendants he will never meet. The artist must enter a tradition whose standards exceed his personality. The audience must recover the patience required to love what does not flatter immediately. Civilization is a wager placed by the living on behalf of the unborn. Postmodernism trained us to ask who had been excluded from the ancestral house. That question may reveal a real wound, yet a civilization must eventually ask whether anyone still knows how to build a worthy room. The answer will come through work. Stone cut square, wood joined properly, paint laid with care, songs composed for voices that will gather in one place, buildings turned toward a center, ceremonies repeated until they enter the body, portraits made with enough honesty that descendants recognize both dignity and mortality. The shared world cannot be recovered through nostalgia, because nostalgia asks for the emotional scent of a past whose disciplines it would rather avoid. Restoration costs more. It asks people to submit preference to form, money to patronage, time to mastery, private taste to public responsibility, and personal expression to inheritance. It asks them to make things worthy of survival. That standard may sound severe. It is also liberating. The artist no longer needs to invent the universe alone. The patron no longer buys another object for an already crowded room. The family no longer decorates without memory. The town no longer treats public space as leftover pavement between traffic decisions. Each receives a task. Build one place where the objects agree. Make one room in which a child can sense the order of things. Commission one work that refuses disposability. Preserve one image that teaches courage without a paragraph of explanation. Restore one ceremony that gathers separate lives around a common center. The nation may follow later. A society is repaired from the scale at which human hands can touch the materials. Return to the courthouse square. The stone steps remain. The eagle still spreads its wings. The church bell sounds across the roofs. The bronze soldier faces east, carrying a memory that the town has nearly forgotten. A father crosses the square with his daughter. She asks who the soldier was. For a moment, the father has no answer. Then he walks with her toward the monument. They stand before the names. He reads them slowly. He explains that these men once lived in the same streets, entered the same shops, knew the same weather, and left behind families who waited for them. Some returned, some did not. The child places her hand against the cold bronze. The object becomes legible again. The world begins to gather around it. A grand world awaits.